Hello everybody, I'm Bede, aka the Terrible Australian, and welcome to my 4th edition of my 2012 Melbourne International Film Festival video reviews. And for this one I'll be reviewing Billy Bob Thornton's latest film as director JAYNE Mansfield'S Car, and as well as the end of the world comedy Seeking a Friend for the End of the World. Alright, let's get right into it. First up, JAYNE Mansfield'S Car. Set in the year 1969 in a small town in the south, the film follows a man by the name of Jim Caldwell, who was played by Robert Duvall, and his 3 sons, who were in the film, were played by Robert Patrick, Billy Bob Thornton, and Kevin Bacon. One day, they received the news that Jim's ex-wife, who left him and their sons 30 years prior to marry an Englishman by the name of Kingsley, who in the film is played by John Hurt, has died, but her dying wish was to be buried back in the small town where her ex-husband Jim and their sons live in. So reluctantly, Kingsley, and along with his 2 children from his previous marriage, played in the film by Ray Stevenson and Frances O'Connor, decide to take her remains back to the small town. And of course from there, as you can guess, it's sort of like a clash of cultures when you've got this sort of southern American family and this upper class British family, and what happens when they get together, especially knowing the fact that Kingsley basically stole Jim's wife away from him. Basically that's the pretty much the basic plot of the film. I should start off by saying that I have to admit I'm kind of mixed on Billy Bob Thornton as a director. As an actor, I do like him, but as a director, I'm kind of finding a bit of a mixed bag. For example, I think his first film as director, Sling Blade, was a completely fantastic film, and definitely was one of the best films of 1996 when it came out. But his 2 follow-up films after that, All the Pretty Horses, I didn't like that film at all, and his next one after that, Daddy and Them, was just absolutely awful. So I definitely wasn't really looking forward to this film, but I was hoping that at least would be decent enough. And overall, it is a decent film. It's not great by any means, but for what it is decent. But I think what makes this film work for me are the performances by the cast. Everyone in the cast, from Robert Duvall, John Hurt, Billy Bob Thornton, Robert Patrick, Kevin Bacon, Frances O'Connor, Ray Stevenson, and everyone else in the cast, they all give top-notch performances, and they definitely are one of the aspects of what I liked about the film. Also, one of the aspects I liked about the film is that it covers some really interesting themes, and one of which in particular is the relationship between father and sons, which I think was handled quite well, because we get a good sense of how the relationship between Duvall's character and his 3 sons, and as well as Hurt's character and his relationship with his son, played by Ray Stevenson, like that, how those aspects of those relationships are covered quite well. And also I did like the fact that the film also covers how different generations view war, because since the film is set in the year 1969, each member of these families has their own viewpoint on the war. Since Duvall and Hurt's characters have fought in World War I, and their children fought in World War II, and each one has their own different viewpoint on the Vietnam War itself, whether it's actually a good thing or a bad thing. And I think that the film covers that quite well. And also you sort of got the sort of the culture clash elements in there as well, which I will admit was actually quite funny. It's not to say that even though it's a drama, it also has some pretty funny moments in it as well. In terms of negatives, I think the movie is just a bit way too long. Like it's over just a bit over 2 hours, but I feel like the movie could have easily have been trimmed by 10-15 minutes, because the pacing of the film is very sluggish, and I think with a bit of editing it probably would have been a much tighter film. and also as a film itself, it's fine. Like, it's not great by any means, and it is flawed in a lot of ways. But like I said before, I think the performances from the cast and the themes that it sort of goes in depth into are what I think make it a pretty decent movie. What it is, it's fine. Like, it's a decent film, and I think if you liked Billy Bob Thornton's other films as a director, you might get a lot out of this. Like I said, it's funny, and it has some pretty good moments, and that's basically all I have to really say about the film. I don't really have any strong feelings about it. I just sort of went in, watched it, thought it was fine, and that's just basically it. Also, there's a point towards the end where I thought the film was just going to end at a certain point, but then it doesn't. It goes to one last scene before the end credits. And I'm not sure what to make of this final scene, because I think Billy Bob Thornton is trying to say something in this scene and have some kind of message within the film. But I think it sort of came off a bit rather heavy-handed, and it was just sort of a really odd note to end the film on. And it kind of feels like it's a scene that should have been the film much earlier rather than at the very end. But other than that, Jayne Mansfield's Car is a decent film. If I had to rate it, I'd give it a solid 3 out of 5. It's not great by any means, but it's decent. And that's basically all I have to say about that one. Alright, now moving on to my next film, Seeking a Friend for the End of the World, which you can guess by the title is about the end of the world, of course. But it's also really, but besides that, it's also, the film is actually about a man by the name of Dodge, who's played by Steve Carell. And it basically follows his life in the last few weeks before the end of the world. And he spends his last days basically being depressed and moping around, and not because of the end of the world, but because his wife left him. And so basically he's just in a constant depressed state. And then one day Dodge finds this this old letter that was written to him by his ex-girlfriend from many years ago, saying that she's still in love with him and she wants to see him and she wants to be with him. So he decides to go on a road trip and track it down, but along the way he hooks up with his sort of offbeat, kind of kooky neighbour by the name of Penny, who's played in the film by Keira Knightley, who's sort of got her own thing, her own troubles going on in her life, and so she decides to tag along, and together they head off on this road trip. And along the way they start to get to know each other and find out that they mean more to each other than they never would have realized. What I liked about the film is, despite like having a premise about the end of the world, it's also quite, it's strangely optimistic as well. It's a film that when I was talking about the sessions on one of my previous video reviews, it really nicely balances both comedy and drama. And both the comedic stuff is really hilarious, and the more dramatic elements of the story are very effective. I think that's all due to the fact that the film has a really well written screenplay, and it's a completely well directed as well. And also both Steve Carell and Keira Knightley are both terrific in this film. They both give wonderful performances. And as you can expect, Steve Carell, he brings a lot of the film's great humor, and Keira Knightley brings some of the film's more dramatic elements. But also it does swap back. Like, even Steve Carell has some fantastic dramatic moments in the film. And also, surprisingly, Keira Knightley's actually pretty hilarious in the film as well. And the film has some great cameos, like during the course of it. Since it's a road trip, you sort of get little cameos every now and again by well-known actors. You got Connie Britton, Patton Oswalt, William Peterson, and a couple other little surprises which I won't mention here. And another aspect I really liked about the film is how it sort of like shows how the world is coping with the end of the world. And it's kind of like you expect in other films, but you sort of see that sort of escalation sort of in those last few days before the actual event happens. And it's both played for drama and as well as for comedy as well. Like, there are some really hilarious moments. And the movie, it's a really good movie. I really enjoyed this film a lot. It's just a wonderful little film. Like, it's definitely not what I expected. Like, I guess I expected it to be a full-on comedy. While it is a comedy, it does have a lot of drama in it that adds a bit more weight to the film. And I just really enjoyed it a lot. And it's definitely a film worth checking out. It's heartfelt, it's funny, it's moving, and it just has two great, wonderful performances by its two leads. I really enjoyed it a lot, and if I had to give it a rating, I'd give it a solid 4 out of 5. Well, that's the end of my fourth edition of my video reviews. Keep a lookout very soon for my fifth edition, which will be coming out very soon, and which I'll be talking about the Spanish horror film Wreck-Free Genesis, and the animated family horror film Paranorman. So keep a lookout for that one when it comes out. Alright, I'll see you all later. Bye!